Good evening to everybody. Welcome to FLARC, the Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club. My name is Nomar Viscarando, NP4H. I am the president of the club and also assistant director of the ARRL for the Hudson division here in northern New Jersey. Before we begin, a little bit about FLARC. We're a club with just a little over 160 paid members, which makes presumptively the largest club in the Garden State here in New Jersey. We're located about 10 miles west of the George Washington Bridge in Bergen County. It is a non-for-profit special service club sponsored since 1965 by the borough of Fairlawn. We have an actual clubhouse with 5 operating positions, and we've upgraded our antenna systems and also our transceivers right before the lockdown came in May. The club, we have here monthly Zoom speaker programs on the third Friday of each month. We hold nets on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays during the evening. We have a growing number of special interest groups to keep members involved during the shutdown. We welcome you to check into our W2 NPT repeater. And also you can do that via Echolink. It's accessible there. Our website, for those of you interested in checking us out, is FairlawnARC.org. Again, that's FairlawnARC.org. You could please sign up and join our mailing list, and be sure to download a copy of our highly acclaimed monthly newsletter, The Resonator. You won't be disappointed. You can also find our large collection of monthly speaker videos by checking out our YouTube channel, Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club. And then, once you find it, please, you could go to our Facebook page, friend us there, like it, and we're also on Twitter. And that's basically it about us. And we will begin tonight's program. It's been a tradition of FLARC that our December speaker program has a representative of the ARRL to bring us up to date with what's going on at Newington and to answer questions of our members. Tonight, we are truly honored to have not one, but 2 of our ARRL dignitaries. Hopefully, you will find time to catch up with their bios when noting tonight's program. We have tonight our newly appointed CEO, David Minster, November Alpha 2 Alpha Alpha, who is from nearby Wayne, New Jersey, and also our Hudson Division Director, David Yurman, November 2 Romeo Juliet, from Sussex, New Jersey, who is also a FLARC member, and she's no stranger here to us, so we're glad to have her with us tonight as well. So there's a lot to talk about, and time is short, so let's get started. It's my pleasure again to introduce to you to Ria and David, and the program is yours.
All right, good evening. I am no stranger to you all. I am Ria Jarman 2RJ, and I am the director of the Hudson Division. I'm also a member of FLARC, other clubs. I love DX apparently, but I also love everything else in ham radio. It's truly an honor to come to this club again and to have a great speaker. So I'll explain the format of this meeting. David is our new CEO, first of all, and I'd like to congratulate him on going through a grueling and arduous process. The process for CEO selection was no walk in the park, and David made it through, and I'm truly honored that he is the one that made it through. Little secret, I had a lot of discussion with David before he took the reins, and both in the interview room and outside of the interview room, and I knew he had the right stuff, and more importantly, I really like that he aligns with a lot of my values and where the hobby and where the amateur radio service needs to go. So I'm going to ask him a few questions, and he's going to answer. Then it'll be your turn to ask some questions that you may have, some burning questions. If you have digital QST, I believe the January issue is out, and you might see the editorial of his, and it's a lot of good stuff as to his vision for the league. So I'm very excited. All right. So with no further ado, David, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
David, NA2AA. I've been in amateur radio since about 1977. I think somewhere around 1978, I went with WA2HDD, who was not far from the Fairlawn Club, living over in Glen Rock. Wound up going to a few Friday night meetings. And as I recall, it was the first time I ever saw slow scan television. But I saw something come through the chat before. I didn't want to get distracted and start typing off to the side, but I saw a quick note from Doug, KR2Q. And Doug and I were friends back then. He was my introduction to high-end contesting, and took me as a teenager up to see K2GL in Tuxedo Park. And I remember after we went through the guard station, I don't know if Doug remembers this, we were in his Porsche 924, and we had just come through, and he looked at me and he said, "You will never look at amateur radio the same again." And we went up to the top of this hill, beautiful Tudor home, and right next to the front door was a big Bertha with stacked 20-meter Yagis on it. I was like, this is unbelievable. And it was just one of, who knows, maybe 18 towers or something that was up. So in any event, I was active in high school at WA2UIB, which was the high school station at Ramapo High School in Franklin Lakes. Went on to Ohio State, and didn't have a lot of time to spend in the ham station, but Whiskey 8 Lima Tango. When I got out of university, I got into my degrees in computer engineering. I got into writing contest software, first on in the early part of college on an early Apple II. And by the time I got out of Ohio State, I was writing contesting software and wrote a CW keyer that I called the Jersey City keyer, as sort of a nod to the Kansas City keyer. But anyway, did contest software development. And I think it was the worldwide CW, because it was right around Thanksgiving. In 1986, we didn't log because Buzz had not bought the computers, but we duped the entire contest and scored it within minutes of the end of the contest. So when we got on 3830, we actually had a clean score. And people were pretty freaked out at the time that we had done that. My call sign comes as a nod to another Tuxedo Park alumnus, Gene Walsh, who was a bit of a contesting mentor to me. And I also contested with him down in South Jersey at N2 Radio Mike's station, another really unbelievable station there just off the Jersey shore. And so in any event, we were using N2AA up in Tuxedo Park, and I got NA2AA when they opened the vanity pool. And Gene called me up and said, "Are you completely out of your mind? Now, if we're both in the same contest, people are going to get confused and think they already worked us. You know, what a stupid thing to do." But anyway, we didn't have that problem because I didn't have the time for serious contesting. So he was safe. In any event, just a little more background. You know, there's pretty much no aspect to the hobby that I haven't met, that I haven't liked. That comes in terms of different ways of operating. So I'm a bit of a satellite fanatic. I love digital. I've checked. FT8 is not the death of amateur radio, by the way. So if you were scared about that, you can rest easy. I enjoy going down to Bonaire twice a year. We have a station down there on the north part of the island, up on top of the second highest peak on the island. And even though we've got I think relatively modest antennas for a contest station, these things are just flamethrowers. So we typically do very well in ARRL DX. We usually win it. And we're competitive in CQ Worldwide. We try to get to the front of the pack for South America. And of course, trying to beat Morocco, paramount to impossible. I think we did it once back maybe in 2012. But I do love going down to Bonaire. I do love contesting. I guess to a certain extent, blame Doug KR2Q and Bob W5OV because they've taken me into the multi-operator environment, and I just absolutely love the team aspect of contesting. So that's a bit of background.
Your roots are deep in the Hudson division. How can you describe a bit of your experiences and your formative years in amateur radio? And that was awesome. So next one is how do you see the role of the league itself today? Because you are now the CEO of the league, and is it different from the times past?
I think the most important thing that the role that the league plays is we're basically the caretaker for the hobby. If you take a look at, and you can argue the metaphor, but if you take a look at CB radio, CB radio back in its day grew into a massive, massive hobby, right? So you could buy these things. I think you could buy CB radios at gas stations, and I think even J.C. Penney at one point was selling Royce CB radios. CB radios were showing up in movies and in country music songs. It was ubiquitous, right? Everybody had one. But the thing about CB radio is there was no one to look after it as a hobby. There was no structure. There was no leadership. There was no advocacy with the FCC. And it's just really a hobby that just sort of imploded in on itself. When you look at the role the league plays, we have a very, very long heritage, going all the way back into had its roots in the beginning of the last century. And as we go into this second century for the league, one of the things that it was actually the platform that I ran on for CEO is to take the league through a digital transformation. The league for a long time has sort of thought on the timeline of being a publisher, and the world of the internet and everything being available instantly and everywhere all the time is a radical change in paradigm. And so that's really where we're taking the league, is to try to take the league through the digital transformation. I think I said it in my editorial. We're not too late. The world has not passed us by. Even as I look tonight at everybody showing up on this Zoom conference, this is something, probably 2 years ago, absolutely no one would anticipate doing, to go to a Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club meeting. So leading that digital transformation for the league sort of over the next 10 years is going to be a critical role, not just for ARRL, but for the hobby more broadly.
You mentioned that tonight we see that we would not have envisioned this years ago. The reason Fairlawn began having all these coffee talks on Zoom, and so before I became a member of Fairlawn, I actually was a presenter at one of their talks. I gave a talk on, obviously, software-defined radio, because that's my wheelhouse. Now they have talks on Zoom, which is great. But the reason we have Zoom talks is because we have a worldwide health crisis, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, known as coronavirus. Do you think that we would have been pushed in that direction absent of coronavirus, or do you think it's just something we would have naturally evolved?
I don't think it would have evolved that way, because, the part of amateur radio that I love and the part of contesting that I love is the community, is the fact that we're able to come together and be together as friends and colleagues. And Zoom, although this is fantastic through a tough time, it allows us to stay in touch with each other. I'm aware that there are groups of amateur radio operators that actually use this every morning just as a health check on each other to make sure that, people are okay the next day. I think absent the pandemic, we wouldn't be doing this. We'd all be in Fairlawn right now. As I recall, I think Tom Gallagher took down a box of cookies or something from a bakery up here. So I would be down there with you in Fairlawn. I'd have some baked goods and we'd be kicking back and enjoying the evening together as opposed to doing it virtually.
And, you know, I'm not against in-person conferences. I love going, you know, to Crown Plaza. I think I'd mentioned Crown Plaza, it was in some time ago at the one of the super suites, or was it before contest dinner? And, you know, that kind of camaraderie, you can't really replace that. But you're right. You know, I mean, in terms of like how we consume our content, it is really different. I mean, you know, I started back doing YouTube because I used to do a little bit of YouTube back then, and now I started back because I figured, you know, people are asking me so much questions online, technical topics, might as well share the knowledge. We have Alan W2AEW. He has, I think, 130,000 subscribers now. And then you have, he's in the Zoom meeting too, by the way. Then you have Ham Radio Crash Course, who I understand you talked to about his things in Ham Radio. And by the way, Josh is now going to be doing Ham Nation. He's going to be hosting the Ham Nation show on his channel. So it's good. So I'm really pleased that the league is going to be doing that stuff. What I do and ask, though, is one of the questions I get from the why does the ARRL still print a magazine, and why can't we get a discount for going digital only? I know I voted on a discount for a digital only magazine. Do you see more members moving toward digital consumption, and what form do you think that'll take? You know, is it just going to be primarily video, or are they continuing to read like articles, magazines, and books?
I think that in the fullness of time, just as we have with our QSLing, you're going to see people move progressively more towards the digital consumption of our content. But I will tell you, members are very interested in getting their print copy of the magazine. And in fact, we also occasionally get requests from members who have fallen in love with on the air digitally. They will not give up their QST subscription, but they now want to get both magazines because they love on the air so much that they want it, you know, they want that tactile feel. They want to be able to flip through the articles and the ads and so forth. You know, and it's an experience for them. So
that's good. One question I asked you in the interview, maybe you can answer it for the public, is how do you get more people like me into the hobby?
You guys need to know, by the way, right? Rhea was so hard on me in these interviews. I know what? So she just asked the question like, hey, how do you do that? In there, she was, holy God, you know, what's going on over there? The real question comes down, and you'll see it in my next column in terms of inclusion. You know, this is a very broad issue with regards to the hobby. And it's not just about women. It's not just about people of color. We have inclusion problems where people go and get their new technician, and the local hams on the club, you know, at their club or on the local repeater beat these guys up. And I get emails from these new hams saying like, you know, what do? I got into the hobby. I don't know where to go because of whatever. We had one guy say, you know, I got my license a year ago. My local club isn't making me feel welcome. And the other day, these two guys beat me up on the repeater. So I'm not going to be renewing my membership, and I'm going to drop out of the hobby. So
I've heard that one before.
So I had him, you know, reach out to his section manager. And the section manager stepped in and got this guy very, very active locally. And, you know, he couldn't be happier. But when I look at inclusion, the way that we're doing it is we're sort of stratifying it at the league. One of the things that we've done in terms of youth, which is something I'm passionate about because I came into the hobby. I came into Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club as a teenager. So we've recently hired on a contract basis a well-known YouTuber who is also an educator and works with kids. In fact, he has he has an elective course on amateur radio that he teaches in his school, and he works with donations from his channel to make sure that every kid that gets a license gets a Baofeng radio when they get their call sign. He's going to be reaching out and working with Sterling N0SSC, who is the youth coordinator for the IARU Region 2. And actually, I just got an email from Ward Silver, who's doing some stuff with Sterling. He wants to get involved. So there's this sort of groundswell of activity about, how we go out and how we approach youth. And at the same time, Bob, NQ1R, who's sitting next to me here, he's our product development leader, our head of product development at ARRL. He's working on a project with two students. They're from Florida, right? Two students from Florida, a brother and sister. They're now in college. They're both ARRL Foundation scholarship winners. They've built an FM transmitter kit. And so we've ordered a number of these that will be selling in kit form for a modest amount of money, that kids will be able to build these little FM transmitters as an introduction to radio, not ham radio, not give them a technician guide and introduction to amateur radio, just to get them interested in the foundational, the basics of radio. And using either a small commercially available FM transmitter, or even there's an interesting way that you can convert a Raspberry Pi Zero into an FM transmitter with a piece of code. It's very low power, but it works. A group of kids that put these kits together are going to be able to test their receivers by connecting up and listening for whatever this FM signal is. I know on the Raspberry Pi Zero, you can put an MP3 file on the card, and it'll play that MP3 file over and over again. So it's there's a lot of excitement there. In terms of women in amateur radio, if you guys don't know, because I did not, I had been told the league had a big front porch with white rocking chairs on it, and there were a bunch of guys sitting out on the front porch, rocking back and forth, ruminating about tube radios and AM. And I got up here, and I have to tell you, we have an absolute crackerjack staff of women that work for the league. And when you look at Becky, who basically innovated on the air, does the on the air podcast, when she's not available to do the podcast and we have somebody step in, people flip out. They're like, what happened to Becky? So, we have Kathleen, who's responsible for sales and marketing, our online store. We went through and did a full assortment plan on nearly 100 titles in the warehouse last week, which was a really interesting exercise in terms of focusing on what's important and also looking for white space in the assortment to say, where are we missing the boat? Where are we missing the mark? And one of the things that we decided is that we're going to expand the On the Air brand into books. And we're going to create a whole series of entry-level books in these different categories, brand it On the Air, and then link it back into the publication. So we can really move beginners, more quickly into the hobby. And, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing is, and you'll see me say it in my columns, get radioactive, get on the air, make contacts, use the spectrum that we have and enjoy it.
All right, that was pretty interesting. That was actually more than you told me in the interview room. So if you had to be hired again, you'd be hired. Hey, I'm a big kidder, but that's good. What would you say is the league's most important member benefit and why? Pitch me the league membership.
So when I've been doing these interviews, I've kind of been stepping out a little bit, being a little bit rogue, but I think it's important sort of people know where I'm coming from. It occurs to me, I've been a league member for certainly most of my adult life. My dad got me a membership back when I was in high school. And, I never worried about the league. I never wondered about, all the different things that they did. I just trusted that they were good stewards of the hobby. And if I needed help, if I needed a book, if I needed a mentor, I have reached out to my section manager in the past. Again, this was a long time ago. But when I was looking to learn, and the league was always there. And it just seems to me that in recent years, the league has sort of been put on the defense about, what do you do for the money? What do you do for the money? And unfortunately, a lot of folks look at an ARRL membership and they see a magazine subscription and they think, oh, I don't like the way things are going, so I'm going to cancel my subscription. It's like, it's not a subscription. You get a magazine, okay? But there's a website with a wealth of information that's there, okay, which is great. But the thing, and I was alluding to this before, the thing that I think the league brings to amateur radio in ways that we don't acknowledge and we don't appreciate is that it brings structure. And what do I mean by structure? I mean, we have divisions. You've got a division director on the screen in front of you. We have section managers, right? 71 section managers that are managing different parts of the country. They've got staff that work for them basically as a volunteer to serve members in a lot of different ways. Affiliated clubs, the support that we give to affiliated clubs, and I can come back to that. But when I look at activities like Field Day, Field Day wouldn't exist if the league didn't keep after it. And it's not, we keep saying it's not a contest. It's not a contest. It really is not a contest. It's an opportunity for a group of people to come together as a community, set up something modest to something serious. And a lot of times the most important decisions are egg sandwiches or bagels for, Sunday morning breakfast. And what are we doing Saturday night? What's going on the grill, right? Because you got to feed hungry operators. Every contester knows that. So, and so when I go beyond that into not just the operating events, but all of the other parts of the structure that we provide, it sort of moves over into the other area, which is the protection of the hobby. We spend a small fortune on attorneys to look after our spectrum and any kind of, FCC potential actions. I found this $50 fee thing interesting. There was a whole part of the community, and it was not small, that said, you know what, $5 a year is a small tax to pay for a ham radio license. The way that we looked at it is, we're sort of swimming in an ocean where there are guys that are literally paying billions of dollars for spectrum so that they can have things that you use, like the new 5G phones. Let me tell you what, those things are eating up spectrum. There you go. They're eating up spectrum. Well, if these guys have billions of dollars going to the FCC, give the radio amateurs a pass. I mean, is $50 really going to be meaningful to the FCC? And the answer is no, it's not. It's a very, very small number in terms of the, the bigness of that ocean that we swim in. And, I could go on about the protection that we provide, with our representation in Washington. But I do want to bring up an answer to a question, and it's not really a question. Again, it's sort of a criticism of ARRL. I've personally received a number of emails from people saying, why are you lazy guys sitting on your backsides and not responding to the FCC? Why do you wait until the very last minute? Well, I have to tell you, it turns out that it is 100% tactical and intentional. If you have a point of view that you want to file with the FCC, just about the worst thing that you could do would be to file it right out of the gate and let all of your enemies sit for weeks attacking your point of view. You know, the way that we look at it is our board members, people like Rhea, you know, collaborate on an email group and come up with their points of view. We harmonize all of that into a position. Our attorney in Washington writes it, and then at the last minute submits it to the FCC. And again, it's another form of protection, making sure that what we're doing is for the benefit of the hobby, and not allowing for people to, you know, take shots at the argument through the process. So in any event, to me, that's what ARRL means, is it brings structure to the hobby and protection. Those two things would not otherwise exist without the league and its members and its enormous network of volunteers. Dramatically restricted or prohibited based on the HOA. Given the importance of radio amateurs to the country in times of need, what I would say to you is there are people who recognize that, they value that, and they want to make sure that regardless of where you are, radio amateurs can answer the call for help when needed. So that to me is the number one big question mark in advocacy, and it's the really tough work that we continue to do to try to get to a positive conclusion.
Yeah, that plus, you know, we have all the threats from 5G and all the other stuff. But Ed and I have been running a division survey. How it works is that we send out a battery of questions to my division membership, and then we are going to tabulate those answers, and I'm going to basically present that in my division report to the board in January.